Stories are about change, but we humans generally don't like to be changed. Usually we have to be pressured into it. So how are you going to pressure the avatar, the protagonist in your story to make sure that that plot feels real, the pressure feels relevant, and readers keep turning pages? Welcome to External Story Dynamics. I'm Jule Kucera, creator and founder of StoryJoules and this way of looking at story dynamics. I help writers craft powerful stories. Last week, we looked at the internal story dynamics, the internal demand for change. This week, we're looking at the external story dynamics, those external pressures that pound our avatar and create that demand for change. In this video, you'll see the 4 external story dynamics at work in stories. And these, as well as the other story dynamics, are described in the Story Dynamics Quick Guide, which you can get by downloading it in the link below. As always, we start with the foundation, the external dimension of order and chaos, and the chaos that puts pressure on the internal dimension of stasis and change to pressure for change. Story dynamics determine how the avatar is pressured externally and how they are demanded to change internally. Last week, we looked at how they are demanded to change internally. This week, it's how they are pressured to change externally. Let's get into those 4 external story dynamics, the 4 that tell us how the avatar is demanded to change. And let's start with that number 1 story dynamic that's in more stories than any other. Yes, friends, you heard it here first. Love. Remember, story dynamics are determined by the values at stake. That's true whether we're talking external dynamics or internal dynamics. The question is, where does the avatar feel the pressure? In the love dynamic, it's in their experience of relationships. The love dynamic, love story dynamics can be heterotypical romance, or it can be a relationship between a non-binary monk and a robot. It's not about romance. It's about love and that connection. And in terms of the external dynamic, the pressure that that relationship puts on the person, the people, to change. It can include family, friends, or even 2 cops who work together. Story dynamics ride on a scale. That was true of internal, also true of external. The scale is still positive, compromise positive, negative, or double negative, the negation of negation, as Robert McKee calls it. In love, the scale doesn't change. It's still love, compromise, love, hate, hate masked as love, with lots of variations in between there, or gradations in between there, which you can tell in high school and teenagers when they're just like so noticing every inch move on the, I think he likes me, I think she likes me. It can be a little tricky to see the external dimension of love because with the love story dynamic, the internal and the external are so intertwined, it can be tricky. But it will be very clear in these next 3 external story dynamics. Action is the most primary, most elemental external dynamic. The action scale is from life to death with gradations between and below. For example, invigorated, exhausted, wounded, in a coma, dead. As for death masked as life, think about The Martian and imagine Mark Watney stuck on Mars if he'd figured out a way to keep his potatoes alive. And if he was living on potatoes for the next 60 years all by himself, that might have been a fate worse than death. Another action story dynamic, The Hunger Games. Different hero, different source of physical threat, same scale. Watney's threat was from nature. Katniss's threat is entirely human-made. Both stories I love, me and millions of other people. Where does the avatar feel the pressure? If it's in their experience of physical threat to the degree that it will demand internal change, action is one of your story dynamics. Crime is the next external dynamic. The scale is justice to injustice with gradations between and below. Nadine Matheson is an awarded crime novelist. If you like smart, grisly crime, she's got it with her British detective, Inspector Henley. Here's a more mild-mannered crime solver. And the example of Nancy Drew raises a point. What about avatars who don't change? There are characters we admire. Sherlock Holmes, Olivia Benson in Law & Order. They don't change because they don't have to. Rather than changing, they inspire us to live up to their example in this particular dynamic. And the reason I say in this particular dynamic is because if I were to say James Bond is a role model, my mother would say, He's promiscuous. So it's not their whole life, although it could be, but it is especially this particular dynamic. And I'll tell you, if there's been a crime committed against me, I want James Bond or Olivia Benson or Inspector Henley fighting for me. I want them on my side. Where does the avatar feel the pressure? The experience of injustice. If they are experiencing that to the point that it's pressuring internal change, crime is one of your external story dynamics. Last up, horror. The scale is from salvation to damnation with gradations between and below. When we think of horror, we tend to think of blood and hatchets, chainsaws, and Jack Nicholson, but there is another kind of horror. To me, Eleanor Oliphant has horror as one of its story dynamics. There is the original damnation from Eleanor's mother, but there's also the continued damnation from Eleanor herself. She's put herself in a kind of mental hell. Some story experts say horror must have supernatural elements. I disagree. My perspective is that horror must have evil. That would include Commodus in Gladiator. Where does the avatar feel the pressure? If it's their experience of evil, such that it's demanding internal change, then horror is one of the external story dynamics. That was our final external story dynamic. Every story with a character arc needs at least one external and one internal. If you're not sure of the primary external dynamic in your story, look for where the avatar feels pressure. Is it their experience of physical threat, or injustice, or evil, or relationships? When you can answer that, then you know whether you have action, crime, horror, or love as your external dynamic. And you can have more than one, but it helps to have one that's primary so you can follow it all the way through your story. To help you do that, download the Story Dynamics Quick Guide so you have it handy and you can use it. As always, if you have questions or comments, ideas, please use the comments so I can respond. Thank you for being here. See you next time for our exploration of community story dynamics. And if you've never heard of community dynamics before, that's because I invented it. Tally ho.